complex events processing architecture is designed around having the capabilities to combine data from multiple sources, streaming and batch, and to infer events and patterns, and detect more complicated circumstances. The real goal of a complex event processing architecture is to identify meaningful events, such as opportunities or threats, depending on your point of view, and respond to them as quickly as possible. So that really means is that you need to bring streaming together with batch, process it on the fly, apply a number of rules engines to it, provide a complete analytics area to it, and from there, the outputs to the appropriate places. So let's start marking some things out here. I think we'll say that this line from here to about here is going to be the area that we're going to call, streaming. Okay, and the batch area will go somewhere like this. Not quite as big, but we're going to make it anyway. Okay, and those are your two major sources of inputs that are coming in. Now let's start to fill this in with some Google Cloud components that are used exclusively here to denote how we do all this. So on the streaming side, we're going to assume that there's some type of on-premises streaming that's coming in, whether that's coming in from the web or somewhere else really doesn't matter. What's important is that it's part of the package that you have to deal with here. So the next thing we're going to see here is those streaming events going into Cloud Subpub. This is a critical element within the Google Cloud Platform. And in this configuration and the way it's going to be used in this complex event processing, it is for handling streaming data, but we're also going to use Cloud Subpub later on as we get to the analytics layer, so stay tuned. And above that, within the streaming area, the customer, the person, the company has a series of cloud apps on the compute engine, and this is just the basic, what you would expect, virtual machine, the powerhouse of it all, highly scalable, also highly configurable. Compute engine is almost limitless possibilities as far as how you might make it compute heavy, memory heavy, solid state disk, all different kinds of combinations. You should go into the Google console and kind of look around, or some of the other documentation pages to understand that, because you're going to end up using compute engine over and over again, or it is the foundation for some of the other elements that are on here from our friends at Google. So the next thing we're going to do is start to add in some more to the streaming area here in the sense of processing transactions, and we're going to do that through Dataflow. So Dataflow is really that reincarnation of Apache Beam that's been adopted and promoted so heavily by Google. And we'll get into a discussion of it in just a moment, but I want to connect the dots here. So you see we have this streaming data coming into that processing transaction area, and Dataflow is helping us sort it out what's going on there. But ultimately what we want to do is get the process data from the stream into something that can deal with it. Something, in this case, being Cloud Bigtable. So why would you use Cloud Bigtable? Why would you use Bigquery as an example? Well, I think that's a good question for you to answer through me and maybe through the comments. But the question is that in Bigtable, you really know what your data is, how it's organized, and it represents a HBase like configuration of a column or database. So that's really good for streaming data typically when we have that type of a situation. Now, as we move through this further, let's go back to the batch side, and let's say that there is at least, one on-premises database, and again, there's some ETL work being done by Dataflow. Connect the dots here. And also that there's probably data in cloud storage or a series of cloud storage areas that's feeding that ETL cycle as well. But again, the top part is streaming and the bottom part is batch. Now let's start to hook them all together here. So the way this will work is that the ETL from the batch side will go into Bigtable, and these are basically events that are time series events. So it's feeding more of that type of information in, and then we're looking at another area where we're going to do all the rules processing. So let me make a box around that so it's a little easier to discern for all of us. All right, so this is really where the rules engines take place, and this is a streaming rules engine. Put that in there. But there's two different products from Google that are available that are being used in this architecture. There's Apache Beam, which can handle real-time or batch flows of data coming in, which is very important in these days. And if you have some things that you wrote that were Spark or Hadoop related, Cloud Dataproc is really where you want to be. Again, this is a hands-off as far as maintenance, etc. Hadoop service, as it were, with Spark that allows you to do incredible things and scale and shrink without having to do all the system administration work that's not atypical of a Hadoop architecture as you move forward. Let's make some other connections here into this rules engine. Of course, we've got Bigtable coming in here, and we'll just assume that it's feeding one of these to as needed or as directed. In addition, we want to take the processing that we've done in the streams area, and we want to bring that down into the rules engine as well. Line here. Perfect. Perfect. So we have a streams area that's bringing in streams of data. This is near real-time type of application. And it's coming from cloud apps and from on-prem streaming sources. And on the batch side, we're basically doing some ETL, transformative work on data, either from a database or from cloud storage. And then in the middle here, you see kind of a processing layer where we started to take the processing transaction streams and get them into Bigtable as time series events, basically. And then either through Bigtable or Dataflow or other sources, bring that into the streaming rules engine area, which really has two components in it, which are Cloud Dataflow and Cloud Dataproc. So that's the Apache Beam and Spark Hadoop, essentially. So that's all fine, and that gets you a lot of data, but it really doesn't help anybody. All you've done is just make more data. So what we want to do is start to get into a situation where we're actually doing something productive. So we're going to go over here, and we're going to show how with App Engine we can essentially make a serverless architecture in a container that can be a microservice if you really wanted it to be, although there's other ways of doing that within the Google family. And again, we're going to come back to our favorite little thing, Cloud PubSub. So why is the PubSub, it's feeding information into this area. So why is that important? PubSub is this interesting concept that you can have a reliable, real-time, immutable message bus where different programs basically publish a topic. And it might be something as simple as customer address, or it might be something more expansive than that. Then programs that need that data subscribe to that data, and then they just do polls. They can do it through a REST interface. There's other APIs that do it. But essentially, Cloud PubSub then keeps track of what that particular application has been pulling out, as opposed to for that topic. And for that same topic, another application may be pulling out data, and it tracks that as well. And so it does all this type of great operations work, basically. So it makes it easy for you to get the data, and it works in real time or batch, and it can really be a driver of an architecture like this, especially when you have complex event processing that you're trying to do. So as we continue here, we're going to add in some cloud apps, and that's coming right off of this messaging rules action center here. That's basically Cloud PubSub. These are cloud apps that could have been developed at any time, but essentially they represent new assets within the corporation, new digital assets, as it were. And they're just really examples of programs that are out there that are pulling topics from this particular version of PubSub. So we will keep moving around here, and we're going to put in what's next. What would you expect? Well, if we got batch, we probably have a data warehouse. Yeah, you guys guessed it. I know. And so that data warehouse is actually pulling things out of this, basically this rules engine to load it up into, what are the execution results of all this streaming data that's come in, combined with the batch data as well. You'll notice, however, here that if you've done a lot of data warehousing, etc., you're not seeing an operational data store. You're not seeing a lot of the front-end systems that are usually associated with the data warehouse. Nor are you seeing the use of a lot of the data mart activity. Bigquery just makes it so easy to do. So it can take the execution results in the case of this use case and just power through them and scale as it needs to and shrink back when it doesn't, and just be just a great contributing member to the overall architecture. You can even lift and shift your existing data warehouse, if that was preferable, into BigQuery. It takes a little work, but it's essentially a lift and shift, and get the benefits of that as well. Now, again, if you have a data warehouse, you need some type of analytics that you can run off of this, and of course we've got Cloud Datalab. You can go from here to here, and you see that that is really another important piece of being able to access the data in that data science kind of way. with the appropriate tools to get to that. That's a whole discussion in itself. And let's connect the dots on one last thing over here, where we want to make sure that the rules engine is also feeding our pubs over here on the analytics side. So that's quite an analytics stack. Now it says push to device here with App Engine. So what's it really pushing to? So essentially it's pushing to, in this case, mobile phones. All right. And down here in the Bigquery area, there's all kinds of reporting and sharing tools that could be used. We could talk about maybe using Data Studio there, but this is basically your center for BI and action and things like that. So why is this so important? So let's run through it from a practical use case instead of just all these wonderful Google components in front of us and try to determine what's the value here. So you've got an up and running business, and your customers are very important to you. In the batch area, you have history of all your customer transactions, what they bought, inventory is available, price, their path through your websites, any type of transaction that came through, and that's been properly processed and put into the data warehouse, as well as being available to for certain topics to Cloud SubPub to make its way over to App Engine, and then finally over into a mobile device, which is that singular device held by a customer. What you want to be able to do in complex event processing is in the streaming side, as you've got information coming in, whether that's weblogs or something else, you need to start processing that in real time. And of course, Dataflow helps you sort that out, and then you get it into Bigtable, and again, the rules engine, and it gets divided up. But eventually, it goes to PubSub again, and then back up through this stack to App Engine and out to the mobile phone. So the idea here is that if you have this historical data about the customer in the batch area, you may be getting new information as far as how they're working through the website currently live. That is an indication to you that you're about to lose them as a customer. Now, how do you know you're going to lose them as a customer? You can look at historical trends. You can do machine learning algorithms, and we could have a whole discussion about that. But let's just assume for the moment that this company knows that increased activity streaming into the system that's not directly related to transactions. So maybe this is this person calling the customer service hotline for the 10th time that day. You want to be able to understand that that's happening very quickly so that you can respond to it. And essentially that's what you're trying to do with a complex event processing architecture, is really bring about some identity to what are meaningful events versus all the noise that goes on, and then take action. It's all about taking action. So in a nutshell, if we want to look at it this way, I'll add one more green box here. And this really represents your kind of your analytics and action layer. So everything up to here has been about getting the data in, processing it, running it through the rules. Now you're in a situation where you can do analytics on it and take action. And of course, this is oftentimes a two-way conversation with web apps. But it puts you in a situation where you can clearly understand also in the reporting that's done. And when I say reporting here, I don't mean in the typical kind of BI sense, it's going to end up in some overnight processing job that eventually kicks out a report. With BigQuery, you can have a reporting system that's pretty much live, showing you what's going on, and that's also part of this whole action idea. It's just not the individual actions you might be taking up here with a particular customer, but you could be looking at trends of what's transpiring through the ability to get so much data in the BigQuery and make it so that every query is essentially scalable, and makes it so that you can really do what you want in the way of finding out what's going on either at a detailed or an aggregate level. In addition, it can provide a platform for doing data analytics. So that's a complex event processing architecture. I hope you've enjoyed this. I have. It's a lot of fun to do these types of things, and I enjoy sharing whatever knowledge that I have with others in unusual ways, like a drafting board here. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you are so inclined. Please write comments. I'll respond to all of them. They make it so that I can interact with you. I can answer questions. I can help you figure out what's the best possible solution, or maybe adapt it to the things that you've been working on. So, for example, here might be a question you would ask me. You said, well, Todd, right here in this middle area where we're doing so much manipulation, etc., Bigtable really is important, and it does time series data. But could we put BigQuery here and have it essentially do the same job? And what would be the pros and cons of that? So that would be like a really great discussion to see in the comments. But also start to pick out other areas. Maybe the difference between Cloud Dataflow and Cloud Dataproc. Another great series of questions can come from that, a great discussion. So I'm encouraging you to please leave comments, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and thank you very much for your time. Your time is important. You're trying to learn new things to improve yourself, and that's one of the greatest things in the world. So with that, thank you, and I'll see you soon.